Don't demand understanding. Don't demand the right to understand all that is happening. Don't demand and say, Lord, you've got to make this clear to me. I've got to be able to see the whole picture before I'm going to be able to serve you, before I can carry on. Don't demand understanding, because you may not be given understanding until sometime later. Joseph was doing everything right and everything was going wrong. Does that ever happen to us in life? The disciples were with Jesus. Jesus told them to get in the boat and to go to the other side of the Sea of Galilee right at evening. Jesus went into the hills to pray. All the disciples had done was obey Jesus. And they were in a boat caught in the middle of a terrific storm. A storm so great that these seasoned sailors who had been fishermen on that lake all of their lives, they were frightened. They were afraid. What had they done? They had obeyed Jesus. That's all they had done. Preacher, are you saying that I can obey Jesus and find myself in a storm? And I'm saying to you, yes. You can obey the Lord, do everything that you're supposed to do, and do everything right, and still find yourself in a storm. Many of you know this verse. For some of you, it is a life verse. It is a verse that every one of us ought to have hidden in our hearts. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not unto your own, what? Understanding. Don't trust on your understanding, your vision of events. Lean not into your own understandings. Trust in the Lord. In all your ways, acknowledge Him. What does that mean, to acknowledge Him? It means to recognize His hand, His authority, His lordship in all things. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. He will straighten it out. Trust in the Lord. You can't depend on your understanding in the larger scope of life. In Isaiah chapter 50, the prophet Isaiah says, "Who among you fears the Lord and obeys the word of His servant? Let him who walks in the dark, who has no light, trust in the name of the Lord and rely on His God." If you're in one of those situations where you feel you're in the dark and there is no light and you don't know what's coming next, trust in the Lord. Then the next verse in Isaiah 50, "But now all you who light fires and provide yourselves with flaming torches, go, walk in the light of your fires and the torches that you have set ablaze. This is what you shall receive from my hand. You will lie down in torment." In other words, try to figure it all out yourself and you're going to end up frustrated. Trust in the Lord, even in the darkness. You know, the entire book of Job is dedicated to this one subject. How do you make sense out of life when life doesn't seem to make sense? Over and over again, Job demanded answers from God. In the end, God didn't give him answers. God gave Job His presence, and Job was at peace. We looked a couple weeks ago at John the Baptist in Luke chapter 7. John the Baptist in Luke chapter 7 was in prison and he doubted. He sent a message to Jesus, "Are you really the one? Or is there someone else that we're looking for?" He was at a point where he couldn't understand. He couldn't see. Habakkuk, the prophet, could not understand. How could God be involved when the wicked were prospering so? He cries out, "How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Or cry out to you violence, but you do not save?" And Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 4 says, "We are hard pressed. We are perplexed." Have you ever wondered what was going on in life and cried out, "Why, oh Lord, why life doesn't seem to make sense?" Well, remember this. Isaiah said, "My thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways. Just trust in the Lord. Just because it doesn't make sense now doesn't mean it won't make sense later. Years later, Joseph was 17 when he was taken by his brothers and sold as a slave. When Joseph is in his 30s, he's the prime minister of Egypt. And his father and his brothers appear before him, starving, wanting food. And now it all makes sense for Joseph years later. You know, we're promised peace, but it's a peace that is beyond understanding. Not peace that is based on understanding. It's a peace that's based on faith, on trust in the Lord. So the first principle is don't demand to understand. You'll be disappointed.